Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent the movement of Brit-Am, Hebrew nations that finds the lost 10 tribes amongst Western nations. So that's what we do. We research the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes and we find them amongst Western peoples. We prove it, and we prove it from the Bible, we prove it from secular evidence, we prove it from every field where there's something pertinent concerning the subject. We work to reveal the whereabouts of those 10 tribes, and we have found them amongst Western nations, and we spread knowledge of this, and this is what we are, this is what we are about, and this is what we do. And we are speaking to you from the land of Israel, from an area in the west, so-called West Bank, in the area of Judah, liberated Judah, and this is what we are here for. And today we're going to speak to you on a subject that we have spoken about in the past, but it's worth revising and pointing out different aspects of this subject, because there's probably something that you missed or something that you need to be reminded about, because this is important information. Now, the lost 10 tribes were exiled. They were taken away by the Assyrians. First there were 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel were divided into two separate entities. It was Judah in the south, and in the north we had the 10 tribes known as the Kingdom of Israel, headed at first by Jeroboam ben Nebat, the son of Nebat, and they had their own system. They set up golden calves in the north and in the south of the area, in the region of Bethel, on the border with Judah, and also in the north in the region of Dan, and they worshipped them instead of going up to Jerusalem. And they followed the pathways of the Canaanites around them, and they just left off worshipping God as they should have done. And as a result, they were punished. They were taken away by the Assyrians and taken away to areas where they lost consciousness of their ancestry. Now, there were reasons for this. Even though it was a punishment, it was also something that God Almighty had foreseen. It was, as if to say, a kind of backup plan in the divine providence, in the ways of prophecy. God wanted this to happen to some degree, and the purpose of it was that the lost 10 tribes should go down to the level of the nations, of the heathens, and evolve upwards with them and bring the rest of the world forward together with themselves. And this is what in effect they did. They did it through European colonialism, which on the whole was positive. There were bad points to it, but on the whole it was a positive thing in human history. It did bring many peoples closer to the truth. It allowed peoples to evolve to a higher level. Even though this sounds somewhat patronizing, this is the truth, this is what happened. And the peoples involved in it themselves, they also evolved upwards and moved upwards. And they are still helping others. They still help others, and they still are the conscience of the world to some degree. And they help other nations preserve a modicum of humane behavior, of humane attitudes. This is what they were exiled in order to do, and this is what they have done. Whereas Judah, on the other hand, Judah was supposed to keep the law, develop the law, and prepare the way for the future Messianic era. And Judah also, with a lot of problems along the way, but also Judah on the whole has also done this. And since this is what prophecy wanted of the two halves of Judah, of the Jewish people, and also of the 10 tribes, is what they wanted them to do, to develop along separate paths, but in the end times they will reunite, they will come back together again. And in a sense, by revealing who they are, by studying who they are and bringing proofs to it, we are helping this process along. We are doing something along the way. And we should be assisted in this. We should be helped financially, we should be helped morally, people should take an interest, and so that is what we need them to do so in order to be able to continue doing what we are doing. Nevertheless, this is that is something for a different consideration. At present, we are telling you what we have found, certain aspects of a few other points of interest. Now, Abraham was the first Hebrew. Abraham was originally named Abram. Afterwards his name was changed to Abraham, but he was known as Abram the Hebrew. So we find in Genesis 14:13, then one who had escaped Canaan told Abram the Hebrew, and so on. We have this expression also, John 1:9, he describes himself when he was confronted with the heathen people, with people from outside of the land of Israel, who were not Israelites, who did not know who he was. Jonah, they described himself as saying, I am a Hebrew. So Jonah 1:9, I am a Hebrew. Now fear the Lord, the God of Israel, who made the sea and the dry land. So Abraham was the first Hebrew. After Abraham came Isaac. After Isaac came Jacob. Jacob had 12 tribes, and these 12 tribes were the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. And amongst the 12 tribes of Israel, Joseph was the leading tribe, or was to become the leading tribe, especially in exile, when the lost 10 tribes went into exile. And Joseph had been blessed, or the sons of Joseph had been blessed, as we find in Genesis 48:16. The angel has redeemed me from all the angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Bless the lads, bless the children, and let my name be named upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So Jacob blessed the children of Joseph, that his name should be called upon them, and also the name of his father Isaac and his forefather Abraham. And we saw that Abraham was known as Abraham the Hebrew. So this name Hebrew was a term applied to the Hebrews, was a term applied to the Israelites. And we find the name Hebrew is a term applied to the Israelites, and we find the 10 tribes being exiled and moving along different pathways of migration to the west. And one of the nations who they became are known to history as the Celts. That is how conventionally they are termed, the Celts. Now, they settled amongst the Celts. We're not saying that everyone in those regions in question is descended from Israel. We're saying that is where the Israelites settled, and they are to be found amongst the peoples there. And indications are that they managed somehow or other to keep themselves separate amongst the peoples with whom they settled, and they later moved on. Today we find a good portion of the lost 10 tribes of Israel amongst the peoples of North America, Australia, New Zealand, also in the British Isles and along the coastal areas of Europe. Previously there had been also Israelites in Central Europe, in Germany, Austria, Italy, all those areas, but they moved out with the great migrations to the USA, and we have proven this. We have shown how in some cases everyone belonging to a certain village would pick themselves up and move out, whereas in a neighbouring village they stayed where they are. And in some cases families split up. There's no hard and fast rule for it. We can just point to general tendencies that are statistically significant, that there was a definite differentiation between those who moved and those who stayed behind. We identified those who moved as being descendants of Israel. And so that is the overall picture. Now, in Europe, a good portion of the tribes had settled amongst other nations whom we refer to as Celts. They are known as Celts because they had a Celtic civilization. And Celtic is a name we apply to them, but it appears that Celt was not the name they used for themselves. The name they used for themselves was Iberi or Hiberi. And this name means in Hebrew is another way of saying the word Hebrew. Ivri in Hebrew, the V sound, can also be pronounced as a B. Abraham is how it's just in modern Hebrew is how you say the name Abraham. Abraham, they're one and the same names, only the V and the B sounds interchange according to set phonetic linguistic principles, according to the euphony, the mellifluous, the flow, one could say, of the language. So we have Abraham the Hebrew. And we have Abraham the Hebrew becoming the forefather of the 10 tribes of Israel, of the Israelites in general, and the Israelites in general settling amongst Celtic areas. And in these regions of Celtic areas we find names that reflect their Hebrew ancestry. And specifically we find the name Hebrew itself. We find it in Germany and in Alsace, that is on the border of Germany and France, and in Austria. Now we don't say that these peoples belong to the lost 10 tribes of Israel. We say that at a certain time, up until about the 1700s, 1800s, there were Israelites there and they moved out. And so we find names of Hebrews in this area that had belonged to them before they moved out and went to the west. We find the Eberesh-Emium in Strasbourg in East France, Alsace, Eberacum in Bavaria, Ebertinus, Ebersberg, Ebergomum, Eberodunim, Eberosheim, Ebersberger in Austria, Ebersdorf in southeast Germany, Eberudonan in Czechoslovakia. In Italy we find Eberuni, Eberiki, Eporida. The B and the P sounds also interchange. We find Ebora in south and central west Italy. In Gaul, that is France, Belgium, Switzerland, all that area is known as Gaul. We find Eborica. And Navarre in southeast France, Eberons, a people in Belgium. Eberonium, northwest France. Eborovices in western France. Eborodunim in the French Alps. We find Eberolocum in Gaul. Brit-Am in Gaul. Eberbriga in Gaul. Eberomagus. Also in Gaul, we have also Hebromagus, close to Narbonne in southeast France. Eberodunum, known as Yverdon in Switzerland, once dominated by the Celtic tribe of the Helvetii. And we find other names also in the British Isles. We find Eborosenes Comitatus in Yorkshire. Eboracum, which is the name of York, originally the original name of York. We also find, according to Ptolemy, the inhabitants of the British Isles being known as Iberi. Also in Ireland, we find the Hibernians, and the Hibernian Sea, between Britain and Ireland. We find the Hebrides Islands. All of these names have this root Heber, meaning Ivri or meaning Hebrew. Find the Hibernian Ocean east of Ireland, the Hibernian south and west Ireland. We find Heber in the mythology of Ireland. The name is with this Heber root, meaning Hebrew, in it. We also find that the Dacian peoples who migrated to Denmark also being called the Iberian Roman writings. So this name Iberi was applied to Celtic peoples. A variation of this word Heber is Aber. We find this name Aber. We find it in Scotland. We find it in Aberdeen and Aberor, Aberdor, Aberfeldy, Abereron, Aberamaman, Aberangle, Aberara, Aberon, Aberbank, Aberbalgoed, and hundreds of names with this root Aber. Find these names in similar names with this Aber root in Wales. Throughout Wales and Scotland we find this name. So there are some who claim that this name often occurs. There were crossings of the river, and where the river is shallow, you used to bring, instead of having bridges to cross over, they used to have fjords where the river was shallow and they used to cross through, and often these other names are found there. And some people say that that is the meaning of the name based on the frequency with which the name is found at these fjord areas. So this is not so, because there are hundreds of these names, and only in a few cases do we find them at fjords, after all. And not only that, even if there was some type of connection, it corresponds with the Hebrew. Because in Hebrew the word Ivri comes from the root Aver. Avram dwelt on the other side of the river Ava. He came from over the river. So we also get the English word over from this same word. So this root, as well as being applied, connoting the presence of Hebrews, it also in Hebrew also could pertain to an area of crossing over. So this is also pertinent, worth noting, and it's also worth noting that the language of colloquial Welsh and Irish of the Celtic peoples, we don't know what they spoke in every area, but we have some areas in Welsh where people speak Welsh, where people speak Gaelic in Scotland, people who speak Asian Irish or knew of Asian Irish, and we can different Irish dialects, and we can analyse these languages and see what they have in common and what they don't have in common. And also linguists have found an underlying substratum in these languages which show that the build of the language, the psychology behind it, was actually that of Western Semites, of people, in other words, people speaking a Hebrew-type language. This has been proven. Not only in the vocabulary, we find a lot of words, there's a lot of words which are similar to words in Hebrew, but also the build and the grammatical structure and other features about it are similar to those of the Hebrews, which is consistent with them having originally spoken a Hebrew language and then being conquered by other peoples, Indo-European peoples, and having foreign languages imposed upon them, not necessarily through conquest, also through dwelling in proximity to other peoples who pick up their language. It is well known in history. Minority groups pick up the language of the majority group, and this happens often, even in cases when the minority groups are the rulers. At other times we find minority groups who rule, imposing their language on the majorities. There are no set rules for such situations, no set rules for such situations, but they help. But we can figure out more or less what happened, and we do know that their underlying language, the language that they had before they picked up the language that they had later, was a language similar to Hebrew, so this in itself is significant. Name for Abraham, Abraham the Hebrew. We also had the name Isaac, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Jacob being Jacob. They were the forefathers. And it was prophesied that the name of the forefathers would be called upon the children, so we saw how the name Hebrew was applied to them. We also find the name Isaac. Isaac was to be found amongst the Scythians, the Saxons, also known as Ishkuza, as Zoach, as permutations of names which, taking into account the linguistic reality of those areas in Scythia, now in southern Russia and so on, they could, well, it is very feasible that these names were derived from the name Yitzhak or Isaac, especially as we have hints of this in the book of Amos, where he changes the name of Yitzhak in Hebrew to Yishchach, which is similar. He does that twice when he's speaking, especially concerning the Lost Tribes. And we find this form of the name in the Scythian areas. So this, and we later find the descendants of the Scythians to have become the Anglo-Saxons who invaded the British Isles and settled there. So this is how the name continued. Remember the verses that we were referring to, Genesis 48:16, where it says, "The angel has redeemed me from all evil. Bless the lads, and let my name be named upon them. The name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." So this is the blessing, that the name of Jacob and of his forefathers Abraham and Isaac will be called upon the peoples. And so we have this name Jacob, Jacob being called upon the peoples. So historically, what do we have? We have peoples in history of Celtic culture who conquered the British Isles, including Britain and Ireland, and also areas of France, and they settled for a while in areas of Germany, and they were in Europe in general. They were peoples of Celtic culture. They're different peoples of different origins. Amongst them were descendants of the Lost Tribes. And eventually they were conquered by the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons and the related tribes who spoke Germanic languages but were not of Germanic origin. They also came through the north. They came from the northern area. They came from Scandinavia and also from what is now the Netherlands, from Frisia and all that region. And they conquered the area that became England. And afterwards the Vikings from Scandinavia also settled in the north of England, and to the Normans, who were themselves originally Vikings, who had settled in France, and they were in France for a couple of generations, which was long enough for them to pick up their language. So we see here the Normans came from Scandinavia. They spoke a Scandinavian type language, something similar to Norwegian or Danish, or perhaps a dialect of their own, but in that family. And after 2 or 3 generations, they already spoke only French, or their own version of French, and they had forgotten the Scandinavian language altogether. And they took this language, this French language, which they had picked it up, which in a very short time, and then they conquered England, and they imposed this French language, this version of the French language that they had, on the English. And for a couple of 100 years, for a good time, the court of the British kings, of the English kings, only spoke French. Eventually, they evolved. English took the French of the Normans, they took the Anglo-Saxon dialects that they already had, and they intermixed with each other, and they come up with an English language. So that is what happened. So I have this name Jacob. The name Jacob was also, we find it amongst the descendants of the lost 10 tribes, especially those from Joseph. We identify the English-speaking peoples as being descended from Joseph, from Ephraim and Manasseh, as well as having input from the other tribes, as well as having non-Israelites amongst them or alongside them. We cannot be 100% sure, but we know that is where the lost 10 tribes are, or that was a major area where the lost 10 tribes are, and that Joseph was there amongst them, and Joseph was a dominant factor amongst English-speaking peoples. And so we have this name, Jacob. As it says, we find in Isaiah 49:6, it says, "It is too small a thing you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, to restore the preserved ones of Israel. I will also give you as a light to the Gentiles, that you should be my salvation to the ends of the earth." So we have this name, and they are known as Yankee. Yankee, the word Yankee is a name applied to the Americans. Yankee. What does Yankee come from? Yankee is a form of the term Jack. Jack is short for Jacob. And in Ashkenazic Hebrew, Jack could be pronounced as Yank or Yankee. Yankee is a name that the North Americans of the USA are identified by. I know that within America itself, Yankee is a term applied to the Northern Americans, and North, in other words, the areas of New York, of North USA, people who were Union side in the Civil War of the USA, whereas the South don't apply this term Yankee to themselves, but overseas, all of Americans, all the people, descendants of the USA are universally known as Yankee. This term Yankee is a form of the name Jacob. We also have the Union Jack, which is similar. The Union Jack means the union of Jacob. We also have the Scotch, who are known as nicknamed Jock, which also means Jack in Jacob. And so we have this name. We also have the name Israel. Jacob was renamed Israel, and in Irish tradition, they refer to one of their ancestors, the ancestors of the Irish and the Scottish, as Israel. Israel is another form of the name Israel. And Jacob was renamed Israel. See Genesis 32:28. He said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. You have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." And again in Genesis 35:10 it says, "And God said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name." And so he called his name Israel. And Israel, or Yisrael, is a name that they did apply to themselves at some stage. They were also known as John Bull. John Bull is a nickname given to England. John Bull is a reminiscence of the blessing to Joseph. It says in Deuteronomy 33:17, referring to Joseph. His glory is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of the ram, that is the unicorn. Together with them he shall push the peoples to the ends of the earth. They are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. And that is in Deuteronomy 33:17, where Joseph is referred to as a firstborn bull. We also find in Jeremiah 31:18, "I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself. You have chastised me, and I was chastised like an untrained bull. Restore me, and I will return, for you are the Lord my God." So here, according to the translation, Joseph, in other words Ephraim, is referred to as an untrained bull. In Hebrew, Egel Mulumada, an untrained bull. Actually, this word translated as bull in Hebrew is Egel, meaning bull calf. Egel, and Egel could also be pronounced in Ashkenazic Hebrew as Angle. Not only that, the Angles and the Saxons who invaded England, they were sometimes referred to as Aili on the continent by their neighbours, and so these names Aili and Angle interchange. Angle is another way of pronouncing the Hebrew word Egel, meaning bull calf. In other words, they were named bull calf, which according to Jeremiah 31:18 was a nickname for Ephraim, and this is confirmed by the commentary of Rashi, the great Jewish rabbinical sage. They were known as Angel. Angles were also known as Egloi, in other words, bull calf in Hebrew, and they applied this name to themselves, and it was also picked up by their neighbours, and that is where we get the word England. In other words, England, the very name England, means Angle land, means land of the bull calf people. And so this is how the Bible identified these peoples. So we see that the names Abraham the Hebrew was found applied to the Celtic peoples. Afterwards we have Isaac, or Yitzchak in Hebrew, whose name in the Hebrew transmutation was applied to the Scythian peoples. The Scythians gave rise to the Anglo-Saxons and people who spoke Germanic languages of Scandinavia and so on. The very name Scandinavia is also named after the Scythians. It's a form it is ultimately derived from the word Scandinavia, meaning the land of the Scythians. And from that, it is traceable back to the name Isaac. And a lot of the Israelites did come through Scandinavia. So this too is significant. And after that, we have the name Jacob. Jacob became Yankee and Union Jack and Jock in Scotland, and Jacob had his name changed to Israel, and you find Israel in Scottish, in Irish tradition as ancestors of the Scottish and the Irish. And also we find the name John Bull, meaning England, and the name Egel, meaning bull calf, and the Angle land, meaning land of the bull calf people. And these are the descendants of the Israelite tribes, especially of Ephraim and of the children of Joseph. In addition to that, we have 70 clans and tribal names, as we find in the book of Numbers, chapter 26, and the book of Genesis, chapter 46. A list of these names, and these 70 names, we find them amongst the peoples of Western Europe. And we also find these names applied to different peoples in that area. For instance, Denmark. Denmark is named after Denmark. In Holland, we found the people known as Zebulun Goy. In other words, Goy, the people of Zebulun. We found a lot of names like that. And all of these names, not only do we find these names applicable to people in that region, but the arrangement of the areas, how they are grouped together, how they are linked up with each other, reflects that of Israelite tribes when they came out of Egypt, and also when they settled in the land of Israel. And these patterns cannot be by chance, and these patterns also prove the Israelite ancestry of the peoples concerned. So you can say so it's a coincidence, it's very nice, it's entertaining, but who knows? We will explain it to you later in more detail. But even if you wanted to say that these things are coincidental, we have a lot of other proofs. From the Bible, from rabbinical sources, from archaeological evidence, from all over the place that also point in the same direction. So when you get hundreds of proofs, all saying the same thing, all coming from different directions, all pointing in the same way, you cannot relegate it to the hand of chance. There's a divine purpose behind this. God is telling us something. We should listen to what the Almighty is trying to inform us. We should listen to what the Almighty is telling us through this information. We should listen to it and take it to heart and internalize it and learn more about it. May the Lord God of Israel bless you all. Thank you.